Hello friends, the story of a man named Tommy Norman was no different from a million others. He grew up in a small Arkansas town not far from his capital city of Little Rock. He worked as an ordinary hospital attendant and made sure his beloved family had everything they needed. And we may never have heard the man's name if it wasn't for one beautiful day when a thought flashed through the 26-year-old Tommy's mind that changed his whole life. Growing up, Norman had an uncle who was the chief of police in a small provincial town. He always liked what Uncle told him about. He talked about justice, about serving the community. Often Tommy heard it all around the big family table. Of course, like any normal person, he wanted to help other people. But at the time, he didn't even think about a career as a policeman, not until he was 26 years old. The youngest of 9 children, he eventually decided to apply to the North Little Rock Police Department, and to his surprise, he was hired, and even successfully graduated from the academy. But the best part began a little later. The young academy graduate was put on patrol, and when his territory was assigned to him, many of his fellow students looked at Tom with horror. He had no idea then what these areas were or what he would have to face. But when the peers sympathetically patted him on the shoulder and told him to hang in there, that's when he began to suspect something was wrong. As Tommy himself later told, "I started making enquiries about my neighborhood and was shocked at what was going on there. Crime was rampant, and it so happened that I, a European-looking man, was in a neighborhood where they weren't liked, to put it mildly. It made me a little wary, but it didn't scare me." On his very first day, Tommy Norman drove his car down one of the streets in that block of North Little Rock when suddenly he saw a group of children who, seeing the police car a few hundred yards away, quickly stood up and ran into the house across the street. This seemed a little strange to the young policeman, so he decided to stop and ask what had frightened them. Slowly, he approached the house and, looking around, knocked on a door a little warily. A woman's voice answered him on the other side and said they were all right. Tommy asked why they were running away, and the reply he heard was that they had done nothing wrong. These words made him even more uneasy. "Did they run away from me?" Norman asked the question with surprise. "Please open the door, I just want to talk to them." A few seconds later, the door opened and there was a dark-skinned woman and her children. Then Tommy said, "Ma'am, I'm here for one purpose only, and that is to help everyone in this neighborhood." Whereupon he joked with the children a little and parted with them in good spirits. As it turned out, such polite behavior by the new patrolman in the neighborhood was very surprising to the local residents because unfortunately they were used to something different, which was that everyone in the neighborhood knew. If a policeman was coming, it was better to hide in a house. And often the cops themselves were afraid to go there and spent most of their time in safer places. The first days of the new policeman were, to put it mildly, very difficult. Wherever he appeared, everyone either left the place or pretended they were not there. In fact, many locals were shocked to see the strange new cop hanging around their streets all the time. Besides, Tommy wasn't having an easy time either. My mother would call me every 2 hours and ask me the same thing. "Are you okay out there? Are you sure you're safe?" No matter how old you are, your mother will always be worried about you. But as you can imagine, our hero didn't want to suffer the fate that awaited him. Like he was just another guy in uniform on these streets. So he made a decision. To become a successful police officer, you need the trust of the residents, and it takes years to gain that trust, but it can also be lost in just a few seconds. And so he decided not just to be another policeman, but to become an integral part of the place. In doing so, he has acted quite strangely and quite differently from the others. The first situation that happened to Norman was precisely a showcase. A man called Willie was arrested for stealing copper pipes from an old house. He was not arrested by Norman, but when he heard about this unpleasant incident in his neighborhood, he decided to talk to him. As it turned out, the man had stolen the pipes just to pay his rent. Although it was clear that Willie should be arrested because he had committed a crime, but Tommy decided to give him a chance. He talked to him for a long time, told him about other ways of making money. "I just thought it wouldn't make his debts any less if we put him in jail. Besides, when he gets out, he'll be in debt up to his eyeballs. He'll have to go stealing again, so I decided to help him pay off his debt." Tommy posted an ad on a social networking site where he wrote about the problem and mentioned the guy's situation. To his surprise, the very next day he received a check from locals to help Willie pay his debts. When he showed Willie the check and explained what had happened, the man couldn't hold back his tears. He cried like a baby. That put an end to the conflict, but the story itself had already spread around the neighborhood within an hour. Many people did not understand what it was all about, but they appreciated the policeman's actions. It's been 17 years since this strange cop showed up in the area. Over those long years, Tommy has become more than just an insider. He's become something much more, something you can't imagine this place without today. And his credentials are off the charts. For example, as he was driving past one of the houses, he saw a barefoot boy, and when he asked why he was barefoot, the answer was very simple: "I just don't have shoes." Tommy knocked on the door of his house, where there were several other children and his mother. He simply asked what size the baby and the rest of her children were. The surprised woman answered, and the very next day she had several pairs of new shoes. But that wasn't all. The neighbor's boy, who kept waving at him and standing outside in the same jumper, Tommy bought a new jacket in the autumn. A woman named Gloria, who was a former drug addict and homeless. He happened to see her walking down the street late night, but when Tommy asked how she was doing, she said that today was exactly 3 years since she had quit drugs. To celebrate this milestone in her life, the policeman invited her to a restaurant where he fed her, supported her choice, and even danced a jig with her. But that's not all. One day, a young couple, Deborah and Jay, who, due to financial difficulties, have to frequently move from flat to flat and eat at facilities for the homeless, were asked by a realtor where you should look for accommodation. And their answer surprised him. You can look anywhere, as long as it is within the area for which Patrolman Tommy Norman is responsible. As it turned out, they moved regularly and always chose accommodation in Tommy's patrol area simply because they felt safe there. In addition, Tommy was even the groomsman at their wedding. The place is now a showcase for other police officers. When a patrolman rides through the neighborhood, everyone who passes by greets him, and the children who wait for the school bus at the bus stop look out for him eagerly. The other day, he gathered the kids together and sang to them. He once danced in the street with them, and it's not uncommon for him to drop them off at school or give them a ride home. According to Norman, the policeman has to deal with a lot of difficult realities. Many of the children who stop at the bus stop come from homes that can't even afford breakfast. So one of the first questions Norman always asks is whether anyone is hungry. Many of the children were initially confused, but later began to trust him. "I don't find it difficult at all. This is the future of our neighborhood, so I always have plenty of juice and cakes in my boot." And after the children attend school, they all go home quickly to do their homework because Policeman Norman is coming in the evening to read them a story. Our hero always carries books with them in the car. Children usually find reading a boring activity, but Norman teaches them that with his funny reading, he cheers them up and even gives them a homework assignment. Unless you doubt it, everyone always gets it done. As the policeman says, the quickest way out of poverty is through education and dreams. And it's the books that provide both. I'd rather point them in the right direction in their lives than have to arrest them later, but by the way, there have been fewer problems with this several times over. Crime has only gone down because many locals and even the worst offenders won't do anything wrong because they would be ashamed to look me in the eye. But even though Norman is now a friend to more people in the neighborhood, there is another reality. In an interview, the man revealed that there was a real grief in the neighborhood recently. Many years ago, I met a boy called Tupac. In the beginning, this kid was always smiling at me, waving and running towards me. He was a sweet kid. I carried him on my shoulders and even put him on my lap to drive. But as the boy got older, I saw him turning away whenever I drove by. Soon the boy wanted to have nothing in common with me. I tried to talk to him, but he always avoided answering. Later, he got into the wrong company and started to make bad decisions. A few months ago, he was killed in the street. Tommy said almost in tears. It was doubly painful for him since he was raising 2 children, 21 and 23 years old. And Tupac was their age. The good cop story came to light in 2015 when rap artist Killer Mike told reporters about him. "I only know one person who's worthy of being emulated, and that man is Tommy Norman, a North Little Rock patrolman." But he became a real internet sensation a little later when another hip-hop star, The Game, and his eldest son Harlem created a GoFundMe page featuring Norman. Several volunteer and homeless support centers are now functioning with the help of patrolmen. Thanks to their work, a huge number of families are not only fed, but also clothed from head to toe. It is thanks to his efforts that many already desperate people who were at the very bottom of society are now living in their homes, starting families, and even developing businesses. Officer Tommy Norman has spoken on CNN many times, and he has been recognized by many community organizations for his hard work. But more importantly, he's an inspiration to other officers around the world who look up to him. He once said, "In order to have less shooting and more order, every officer just needs to get out of his vehicle and walk down the street. He needs to talk to people and be a part of the place. When you become one of their own and set an example of how things can be, they'll always believe you." So that's the kind of cop named Tommy Norman who, once he's on the streets, he could not just bring order to them, he could change an entire city and its people, and that's just because he cares. What do you think of his actions? Be sure to leave your opinion in the comments. And that's all for today. Rate the video if you liked it, and talk to you soon.